With that, I first wanted to start today's session just by welcoming Ezio. We've had the pleasure to be with him actually in Amsterdam. Sarah, Tuna, and I, Mikhail, are all on a day with him in Amsterdam. We've got to learn a lot about him. I'll introduce him a little more formally before he starts his talk. But with it, we hope you're excited to learn a little more about the Italian context and specifically this intersection between urban regeneration, markets, and governance that he'll be talking about um, within today's speech. So with it, YouGovern is the Urban Governance Research Network. All of you guys are members. We also invited externals, or we promoted this event a little more widely, so we might have some newer faces here. But with it, the Urban Governance Research Network was founded about 3 years ago within the context of the University of Amsterdam, but specifically Tuna's chair of within the university, sort of focusing on this intersection between urban planning and property markets, but also urban governance in general. With it, I'm the head of academics. I'm Sarah Ozel. She's the head of research for UGovern. And what we do is we really try to publish and think and connect researchers on the topic of urban governance. With it, we use our website as a central location and repository to share what our members are working on, but then also a lot of the knowledge that we produce as a group. So we have a lot of collaboration, a lot of different opportunities for younger career scholars to interact with later career scholars and also um, learn new interesting dynamic topics within the umbrella topic of urban governance. So with it, you check out our new website. There's a lot of cool content on there. There's also a knowledge center and a blog where you can learn about the stuff that we're doing as a team. With it, we have some general research um, themes where we sort of categorize the different topics that we look at. We look at urban planning, property markets, spatial regulations, law and policy. So a lot of our members fall into these different categories. Within our Knowledge Hub, more specifically, we publish keynote lectures, governance discussions, policy reflections, podcast seminars, webinars, and we're always looking for new members to contribute to this. With it, membership is based on active participation. So as all of you guys know, being part of YouGovern means at least one contribution to one of our Knowledge Hub products every year. So that could be as little as a blog post, but as big as arranging an event like this where we'll host and open it to our network. So with it, we look forward to seeing um, what our members produce each year on the topic of urban governance. With it, if you're also interested in video content and you don't want to read the blog post, we also have a lot of opportunities to promote and post video content on our website. And this is always the most engagement we see. We see a lot of people watch our videos on YouTube, for instance. So if you have a video that relates to a project you're working on, or you want to just say something about urban governance in a particular context, you could also host a discussion and we could post these online. With it, one of the other things we've been working more actively is also bringing policy reflections and reflections on contemporary contexts. So we have a lot of content, for instance, on justification within Amsterdam. But if you're also working on a policy angle, we have members who are also policymakers within YouGovern. So I feel this is a nice place to, publish work that you may not be publishing in an academic journal, but you also might want to share with a wider audience in a more blog format. With it, the main way that we communicate with our members, if you become a member, is you'll get our newsletter each quarter where we introduce new members, as you can see on the right-hand side. But then also we explain our programming throughout the year. And with it, as you can see within this quarter, we actually have a very active program. For instance, we're on our event here on October 24th, but we have two events for November and actually three events scheduled in December. So hopefully we'll be seeing a lot more of you at future events. And we're also trying to prioritize both in-person and online events as our membership grows and becomes increasingly international. So with that, we hope to see many of you guys online and then hopefully have more opportunities to see members in Amsterdam in person when we have funding opportunities to bring you here. So with this, I would like to formally introduce Ezio. I've had the very great pleasure of being with him all day. So I've gotten to know him a bit more on a personal level, which has been great. I know we're not in the same room. He's right beside me in the other room. But anyway, I think he's a leading voice in urban economics. And he's really here today to, I think, gives us some hands-on experience and some perspectives on his ongoing research and what he's been working on within the Italian context. With it, he's currently at the University IUV of Venice, where he's a full professor of real estate economics. And his research, I think, really explores this Italian European city transformation that we're seeing today and sort of the aftermath of some of these recent economic shifts and trends that we've been seeing. So with that, we've had really rich conversations around how smaller and medium-sized cities are coping with some of the challenges they're experiencing today that hopefully we'll see within this presentation. With it, we look forward to hearing what he has to say. And with it, we'll also be taking, if you just joined, any questions within the chat during it, feel free to place them in the chat. Sarah and Tuna, I think, will be working on moderating the chat. And then after that, we'll bring those questions and open it up to a larger conversation. So if you have any questions, throw them in the chat and we'll continue to monitor that as it goes. So with it, I'd like to turn it over and I'll stop sharing my screen.
I think it's my turn. And first of all, I would like really to thank you all, and in particular Tuna, for this invitation that I greatly appreciated because I think this idea of having a network throughout Europe and thinking internationally about the governance of the city, I think is a bright idea. It's an excellent idea, and I'm really proud of participating to such an event. So thank you for the invitation that was really greatly appreciated. You gave me an interesting topic, and right now I would like to share my screen. Here we go. And you gave me this topic about regeneration in Italy, crossing all the topics that you mentioned before: real estate markets, local governance, planning. So we have plenty of topics that should converge to this idea how to regenerate cities in Italy. I would like to deal with this topic, trying to answer three questions that you see in the slide that I'm presenting now. And I would like to stress that these three questions, these three topics are in my agenda of my research activity and even in my activity that I have with institutions and private companies. And this is the very core of my agenda. And I'm going to present some activities that have been already carried out and some activities that are still going on. So open research and some other research that I think are more mature, more concluded, so that I'm going to present final results. So it's a general presentations in which you will hear, some research that already ended and some research that are still going on nowadays. As I said, there are three questions I wanted to deal with you today. The first one is how the structure of the Italian territories and cities have been transformed in these later years. And as Andrea said, following the important, somehow dramatic shift in the economies that happened, let's say, 15 years ago. The idea is to confront two possible options. On the one hand, we could consider an homogeneous development or a polarized, concentrated development into a few cities or even in one city. We are going to discuss about that, going through, in particular, the real estate markets that are just fundamental to understand where we are heading to. The second question I would like to discuss deals with the regeneration process. How are we going to deal with the regeneration process, if we want to focus seriously with an innovation, with a regeneration that has to deal, on the one hand, on the social innovation, and on the other hand, with economic development. I think we are going to go through this question, and I think it's going to be very stimulating, even in a potential discussion that we could have talking about different experiences throughout Europe. And the third question I would like to discuss is concerning the general conditions that allow a process of urban regenerations. I think somehow we have to discuss general conditions that I think are not only for Italian cities, but I think throughout Europe are condition we have to discuss and we have to elaborate in order to have really a serious conversation about the development of our cities, their process of regeneration. So let's start with the very first question, because I would like to discuss with you the development of the cities in Italy, starting from a specific point of view. This is really peculiar of what we discuss in this network. Italy has always been the country of 100 cities. And as you can see here, you see a pattern really spread in the north, in the coast, along the Adriatic Sea, along the Terreno Sea, and you can see a widespread development. Is that a picture that still reflects the territorial structure of the Italian country? Well, I had a really a powerful shock some years ago when the chart that I'm presenting now appeared in an important newspaper, Corriere della Sera in Italy, and really made me reflect upon how the country was changing. As you can see here, the topic that was elaborated in this chart is the movement of the students from certain areas to different areas. First of all, I would like to draw your attention on the figure that you can see below, minus 27%. Already there, you could see that this number of students that were enrolled in university were diminishing. There was a minus sign. Why? Because there is a demographic shift going on. So actually, if we compare the students that were enrolled in 2004 and the students that were enrolled in 2014, we had a minus 27%. But this 27% was not affecting all the university alike, but actually some university, and in particular the University of the North of the country, were affected slightly, minus 8%, minus 9%, while the universities located in the metropolitan areas of the South were badly affected with sinus that are very important, minus 43%, minus 49%. So actually a big change. And when you see this chart, you know that after 10 years, that situation is going to be stable because people that moved for their study probably are going to remain in the cities in which they studied. So actually, I went to check the data from ISTAT, the national structure that elaborates the data, the statistics for the country. And you could see exactly the same dynamics with a powerful change in the territorial structure. All the areas in the Alps, all the areas in the mountains of Apennine were almost abandoned, and you can see them because they are in red, while so few areas were the object of a migration process, in particular in the north. And that obviously is going to affect the structure of the cities and the relative importance. So We wanted to analyze that, and we thought, why not considering a variable that is key in our research? Because real estate values actually have this great feature. They make the synthesis of demand and supply, and they just give a signal that a city is attractive or a city is not attractive anymore. So we wanted to elaborate the signal, not in the short term. Normally we listen data concerning year-to-year transformation, year-to-year evolution. Now, we wanted to have a 10-year span so that we could appreciate what was going on, what was really happening in the Italian scenario. And here is the representation of the values given 100, the value in 2012. You have just one city that went up 40%. All the other cities remained stable or lost value. Actually, the average loss amounts to 15%. That's remarkable for a country that has in its brain, in its economic practices, the idea that real estate values can't move but upward, can't move but up towards always higher market values. Actually, during these 10 years, we lost a large fraction of value, 15%, and certain cities actually lost a great fraction of their value, not only in the south, but also in some areas in the north. Normally, we understand that Italy is divided a bit into a rich north and a less rich south. Actually, as you can see, a city like Genova lost 40% of its value, real estate value, in this time span, giving a picture that is more elaborated, more complicated to seize and to understand than a simplistic approach north and south. So actually, what we could see is not an homogeneous trend, but we see a process of concentration that is greatly focused on just one city, Milan. We wanted to have a more detailed representation, so we wanted to elaborate data from economic trends, demographic trends, the presence of infrastructure, digital, physical, and immaterial infrastructure. So we wanted to have a more detailed representation of the trends that were going on. So we elaborated a cluster analysis in order to understand if we could have a clearer picture of what was going on in the country. Let's see what the cluster analysis showed us in terms of representation of the trajectories of the country, and in particular of its metropolitan cities. Here you can see on the right, just one city. There is one cluster with one city. And all the performance, demographic, economic, infrastructural performance are above the mean. There is a group of cities that has all the performance below the mean, is a large group, in which, as I said before, you can find southern metropolitan cities, but also two important northern metropolitan cities, Genova and Venice, the periphery of the north. And you can find also a group of cities, Turin, Bologna, Firenze, Roma, that are in the middle. By the way, since we want to discuss the role of infrastructure as a fundamental structural issue that gives shape of the territorial structure of a nation, all the cities that I mentioned in the group, in the cluster number 1, are connected via the high-speed train. Just a curiosity, but a crucial element that explains in the long term the role of public investments in infrastructure. Accessibility has been always a fundamental feature economics deal with. But here you see the difference in the long term. You had carried out an important, a very large investment 20 years ago, and you actually see probably the result. Well, this process is peculiar with what is going on in Europe. Well, let's say no. Actually, Italy is lagging behind, but is just in the group of the European countries in which, as you can see in this brilliant research carried out by Roses and Wolf, actually, we can see how the capital cities deal with the growing part of the GDP. And this not from yesterday, but from the 80s. So it's a long way. And this inequality in the value creation, this inequality in the wealth management inside a country is visible since 1980s, not from yesterday or the other day. So actually it's a long run that has a peculiar feature in Italy. This is not the capital that deals with the maximum of the value of the GDP, but it's a different city, Milan, that always been the city, the most important city as far as the economics are concerned. Well, in the conversation we had before, previous to this meeting, we wanted to go through some structural feature that determine in the long run planning, housing markets, etc. So let me go through very fast through some elements that I think are important to be shared and that explain perhaps the long-term trends that we are going to deal with, at least in Italy, but not only in Italy, because this is a trend, or these are trends that are not peculiar of just one country, but affect many more countries. First element is demography. I would like to share with you this Istat slide. Just, I mean, supposed to be, common knowledge, but actually it is not. From their elaboration, from their analysis, actually, in the medium term, we are going to face a decline of the population in 4 cities out of 5. And in the rural zone, the percentage of the cities that will have to deal with the demographic decline gets to 90%. So degrowth, decline, urban decline is not, a choice. It's a fact we have to deal with. It's something we have to manage. And that's very, I think, culturally important with respect to planning, because planning was born in a context in which planners had to deal with growth, had to organize growth. Right now, planners and everyone who is affected by urban choices, urban regeneration, etc., has to deal with a structural decline of at least a large number of cities. I'm not saying all of them, but a large number of them, at least in Italy. As you can see here, in the short term, this is going to be very relevant, in particular for the South. You can see Mezzogiorno is third line, ripartizione geografica. As you can see, right now, 19.9 million of inhabitants. In 2030, there's going to be a loss of 0.8 million of inhabitants. That means that in something like 5 years from now, we're going to deal with a structural reduction of the population. We have to take care, and we have to deal with cities that are going to lose in a very fast way population, and a completely different scenario from what normally planners had to deal with. The second issue I would like to stress is the economic growth. Here, a chart in which you have a representation of values of the increase of GDP for the countries of the European Union. As you can see, there's the average of the European Union, but you have all the big countries that belong to the Union. And here you see the great difference between Italy and the rest of the continent. It's not a surprise if the next generation has been obsessed with 200 billions for Italy, because Italy has this disease, this no growth disease. And you can see the line, the very bottom, shows the incapacity of the country to get back from the double shock of the economy, the first one in 2008 that affected all the European countries, and the second one that affected Italy, and Italy pretty much alone with Spain, in 2012. For Spain, it has been a shock, but they recovered. You can see the green line. For Italy, the situation is still difficult, and I think we are still the only one country in which the wages are below the level of 2008. So we never recovered for the labor force from the shock of 2008. We still, some years have been passed, so we should have recovered from that shock. It's not the case. Let's go to a second field of research that are focused on what can we do in order to manage urban regeneration. And I can see, many administration, many regions, many cities, they say, okay, let's attract the talent. The talented people are going to regenerate our cities. And there is one region, Emilia-Romagna, they said, okay, we're going to promote a law favoring the attraction of the talented person, the talented people. So I think this was an idea that was just very interesting in the past. You put all the talented people in one place, you ask them to create new value, to innovate in the economy. We tried, this is the incubator that is present in Venice. Result was completely, I'm not saying a disaster, but rather below the expectations. So we have to imagine something different. We have to encompass the issues that regeneration has to deal with. And we want really to combine elements that reflect the value of society and the value of the economy. So actually, this is not something just stressing for a generic desire to promote the values of society, but I would like to stress the fact that social capital and productivity, in particular labor productivity, are connected. And I would like to stress this article by Roberto Ganau and Andrés Rodriguez Pous that really measures how the combination social capital and labor productivity is very important. And for the context of the Italian mid-size and small-size cities, this combination is crucial. So we have to combine these two elements. If we want to promote, if we want to trigger urban regeneration, we have to combine the two. We have to combine new social capital and new productivity and new economic value. What can we do? I think it's an interesting perspective of research is just to promote innovation ecosystems in which the two variables are combined. I know that since I read some interesting article by Tuna and by Sarah, there is just this ambiguity about the place making. Is this something that just an umbrella just to celebrate the neoliberal city, or is something serious that we have to rely on because there is this important component of society, and there is also the component of the economic growth, economic development. I would like to show three examples on which we are working on in order to understand if these examples are really capable of creating, on the one hand, economic growth for the city, and on the other hand, new social capital. The first one is Base in Milan, in which real estate asset was ready to be put in sale, to be sold to the private sector, has been kept by the municipality of Milan in order to create a potential ecosystem in which social activities and economic activities are combined. And in their presentation, they declare they want to create an hybrid cultural center in which they do not stress in their presentation that there is a component in the upper floors in which there is innovation, there is green economy, there is a large number of consultants that deal with economics and management. So actually, this ecosystem could be a paradigm of combination of social activities and economic activities, and the combination could be a drive for urban regeneration. What we have now as a problem is how to measure the social impact. Because if we have the metrics to elaborate a clear picture about the economic impact, number of companies that went through this important hybrid hub, number of people that worked in, how do we measure the impact? Well, we are trying with social return on investment. We are trying with multi-criteria tools, but that's an open debate concerning how to measure the impact of such a hybrid hub. A second one is in Florence, is very interesting, Manifattura Tabacchi, in which you have on the ground a series of social activities, while up you have plenty of other activities, commercial, managerial, economic activities of the most different types. There is one thing that I would like to stress of this operation. There is also a school, a university, private and public initiative. It's very important to think that the investment on universities, on school is relevant. And this is the reason why, because Italy has not only a demographic problem, not only an economic one, but probably is interconnected with the small fraction of people with a tertiary education. Here, the statistic is always, I think, scary, at least for me. I'm a professor. And the fact that we are so behind the average of the European Union, just a relevant issue we have to deal with. The third one is in Naples. It's just a very interesting initiative run by a social entrepreneur, an entrepreneur that wants to meet hands at the end of the month, but also is clearly interested in the impact that such a regeneration process has on the community. We are in a very difficult neighborhood of Naples, Quartieri Spagnoli, and in this neighborhood, this operation wanted to bring new life with schools, with economic activities, very interconnected with the social welfare, with the welfare promoted by private operators. Well, all these initiatives are probably the most interesting initiatives that combine this new dimension, private, public, oriented to economic growth, oriented to the impact. let me say it straight. It's a very ambiguous uh, territory in which you can have, on the one hand, the pressure for growth, and you use the label social just to promote speculation or private interest. Or on the other hand, you have the brightest idea and you have the biggest interest in the social impact, but you are not able to create value in order to make all these operations sustainable. So I think we have to consider the very narrow boundaries in which all these operations have to move on. Well, from the academic point of view, I think it's very interesting to consider how to measure the impacts, how to measure their effects in terms of regeneration. It's not easy to understand if the cities getting benefit out of this operation. How do we measure that? Is it possible? Is it just impossible? I think defining the metrics and defining clearly the object that we have to measure is a very scientific and cultural big challenge. Let me go to the final part of this presentation, because when I present these hybrid hubs, these hybrid initiatives in which social capital and economic growth are combined, people just always stare at me like, okay, but what about something more structural, something more relevant from the city point of view? And I would like to say that it's very important to stress some general conditions that I think are very, very important in order to promote an overall regeneration process. Let me go to three elements. The first one, just, okay, I'm in Amsterdam, so I have to stress that. It's impossible to recreate 10 metropolis. It's a nonsense. For the economic and demographic reasons, much wiser is to integrate the existing network of cities. So I'm in Amsterdam, and the Randstad is just the paradigm that we all use in order to clarify how it is possible to organize a complex territorial network into a sound and solid network of cities. I know Dutch people are going to complain because the train, the bus, the metro is not perfect, but I can tell you that if in Italy we could get to the performances that Dutch cities can show, well, we would be just, delighted. Okay. I think there is a great interest about that, and we are elaborating some research that confirm that when there is an investment in public mobility, in infrastructure that allow more clear integration in the city, the market and then the private preferences can be seen, can be appreciated. Here you have some statistics that we are going to present in a future paper, in which it is clear that if your dwelling is close to a metro line, a surface metro line, your house is going to have a greater value. And this is not just a signal of the market, but I would like to stress the point that market preferences are clear and give a signal of the collective preferences towards a city in which public investment in mobility, in integration, is greatly appreciated. Second, I think there is a great concern about sustainability and a different quality of life. Once again, perhaps that is common knowledge, but the fact that we would like to reorganize public space with less car and more public space and more space for nature, even to deal with the climate change challenge, Well, once again, it's not something that comes from the European Union, from a top-down, vertical decision process, but it's something that is perfectly consistent with the preferences of the people. Once again, for instance, let's consider the real estate market. What about, for instance, the preferences and the price premiums that you can see in the real estate market for more sustainable dwellings? It's clear. There is a clear differentiation between uh, more sustainable dwellings and less sustainable ones. And that is going to be not only an important signal for future decisions in the city, but also a problem we are going to face in the future concerning what we could call a real issue for the just transition, because some of the Italians are going to be owner of an efficient, modern, and sustainable dwelling. The other ones are not. And probably is going to be a difference between the rich and the poor ones. But that would be the opportunity of a new session in YouGov network. Let me go to the basic point. Here we have a clear signal. Sustainability is not something that is out there in an unclear dimension. It's something that people appreciate. People would like to have a dwelling, for instance, sustainable one in a sustainable neighborhood. And the market is registering such a new set of preferences. Well, we have also a very serious housing problem, a housing problem that is strongly related to the concentration process I mentioned before, I discussed before. This is a very well-known movement anti-rent in Milan. The young student here is showing stop unsustainable rents, and has been a very popular movement in which you could find professors, students, citizens all together against a city that is dominated by the rent. Obviously, the rent did not show up, so all the owners did not say anything, but it is clear there is a confrontation between two ideas of the city, one for the citizens for a great variety of opportunities. One is more related on property rights. Since I am a property owner, okay, I have the right to make you pay, and the market is the final judge. I would like to stress that this is a serious problem because we have rents that went a lot higher than the augmentation of the wages. I said that before. Here you have a very interesting study that has been carried out in Milan, where this difference is at the utmost level. And you see here that the pressure of the urban rent is hitting, in particular, the wages of the lower and the middle class. This is transforming Milan in a city in which, if you do not have a decent wage, you better not even think about moving. And that is just transforming the idea itself in of such a city, because actually it's becoming very difficult to sustain such level of rent. I think as far as the initiative, the politics that we are promoting concerning the radical transformation of the housing market, we can have a wide set of initiatives, but that would be a discussion that would take hours and hours to debate. So it's not the case today. So let me go back to the final conclusion, because I really would like to stress the idea that through a discussion concerning market values, market pressure, market rents, I think we have the clear signals about what is structural in our cities, what we have to deal with not only today, but in the long term, what we can consider from here for 10 years long as crucial issues we have to manage, crucial topics that we have to deal with in the future. I think markets is there not only to be, I mean, we do not have to, make it as an idol, but gives us a signal about what is very important. And the other dimension I try to present in this synthetic presentation are there to say there are some structural issues we have to deal with. And regeneration cannot move if cannot be something real, solid, and sound if we do not take into account this structure, this fundamental issue. Thank you for your attention.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ezio. I took a lot of notes and maybe a little overview because you touched so many points that I find extremely important of the governance of cities today. I think the three most important points that I take out of your excellent talk is, first of all, the importance of relations, relational governance, scale of geography and actors. So you talked about we need to understand the context in relation to different sectoral inputs and dynamics, different geographies, and also different factors that have an impact on each other. So this relational aspect I find extremely important. Secondly, you, I think, underlined very nicely the importance of knowing the demographic, economic, infrastructural performances. And without knowing these performances, you showed us very nicely that it will be very difficult to measure the social impact they create. And then again, these performances, those performance factors, have an impact on each other. And thirdly, I think, and I think maybe because I would like to see it myself, the importance of public investment, especially in infrastructure, how important it is that to govern cities and make better social impact. I see a couple of questions in the chat box, but before we go into that, I want to ask you a fundamental question. This, I think, this landscape that you very nicely draw, in my view, creates an expectation of more centrally controlled and comprehensively planned governance landscape. Do you agree with that? And if so or not, what kind of governance we need?
Well, that's a big question. I would like to start one seminar again, but I think you really picked three topics that are the very core of my research agenda. Because first of all, relational aspect. I think there is a great amount of research carried out by the neuroscience scientists that really show how we get rich through the relational experiences. And for too long, studying economics, we thought that Homo economicus was just alone, making his own or her own decisions. Well, actually, dimensions like happiness, satisfaction, regenerations, perhaps deal with the broader sense that is strongly connected with these relational dimensions. And when we try to evaluate something difficult like the quality of life or the happiness, of course, these dimensions are strongly correlated with the amount of money we have in our pocket. but that is not enough. That is not evidently enough. And that's a really interesting area of research we should encompass in our activity. There is an issue that I think is very important that is related to the measure of the different performances that we have in front of us. Performances of our regeneration initiatives, regeneration process, do we trigger the impact of the infrastructure? Because getting to the third point you mentioned, public infrastructure, the long term is just amazing. I'm not obsessed about public investments, but it is remarkable that all the cities that are connected in this great infrastructure project, that is the high-speed train connecting several Italian cities, made these cities more attractive, more capable of wider competition. That evidently is not enough, but certainly is a feature that contributed to their resilience. I'm using a word that's complicated. But in economic terms, that is a very powerful element we should take into account more and more. Well, when you say about how, what about the planning of these cities? I think in an article, I think you wrote some years ago, you talked about creative planning and flexibility about. I think strict regulation was perfectly consistent to the organization of the growth. But actually, right now, we have to take more risk. We have to trigger more complicated initiatives. We have to promote something more risky. So I think in that perspective, being creative is going to be the crucial aspect of a governance process in which you have all the stakeholders and you say, okay, let's take this risk. Let's try this. Let's have all the technical devices, all the metrics through which we are going to evaluate the impact, the success or the failure in order to implement a learning process. But I do not think, the old techniques that we had from the past can be usefully utilized in nowadays. I think that was good for a world that was growing. Right now, figures are different, and we have just to deal with them. And I'm not sorry, that's reality. Adult people normally deal with figures, and there's no problem. We have to deal, and we have to organize our world consistently.
I think we will get back about that degrowth agenda. I see a couple of questions.
Yeah.
But I would like to turn back to our audience because there are many questions in the chat box and start with Nagwa Kadi's question. She says, thank you for your presentation. Can you please elaborate on your experience with using the social return of investment tool and multi-criteria tools you explored, mainly what challenges you faced in using them? She says, in city development, many stakeholders are involved. In your opinion, who should set the criteria for defining social impacts?
Well, that's a tough question, but let me tell you an interesting story. I worked for the Ministry of Culture. That was very interesting about the social impact of these regeneration hubs for one reason. All these regeneration hubs declare that they are capable of promoting culture, and they have always performing arts hub, they have galleries, have plenty of cultural activities, and they get funded by the ministry. And we are talking about thousands of initiatives that are funded by the ministry. So the ministry wanted to know more about it. And in that case, they said, we do not want to have any index, like social return on investment. We do not care about that stuff. We do not want to have figures of that kind. We want to have an elaborated picture of what is going on there, or what has affected the community thanks to our funds, thanks to our money. In that case, we used a multi-criteria approach so that the picture was with the good things, the bad things in this part. That project was excellent in that part, was not clearly a success. Actually, we worked on a sample of these hybrid and cultural hubs, and the results were rather complicated to digest, because on the one hand, they had a serious impact on the community, but on the other hand, they had no economic sustainability at all. So actually, they exploited the people that worked on. So it was a complex representation of the initiative that would have never been caught with an SROI measure and with a typical economic evaluation. In other contexts, I used the SROI index because for instance, a municipality asked me, but we financed 2 student housing operations. Was it good? Was it useful? And in that case, we differentiated the impact according to the context, according to the services that provided by the 2 operators. So even in that case, the information turned out to be relevant, but the client, let's put it in this way, was concerned about, a very strict and dry comparison. Tell me who's the best. And in that case, the SROI was effective because you had 2 figures to compare. So actually, it's a very context-related operation to choose between 2 different instruments. And I would stress, even the culture of the client, of the people that are asking you about an evaluation. And for instance, the Ministry of Culture, if you simplify the world using just figures and numbers, they just, no, that was not their culture. And they asked me, no, we would like a more problematic representation of what has been going on. We would like to have a more detailed representation. Other clients, in particular coming from the business community, would say, hey, give me how many euros I have, determined in terms of value creation if I compare €1 of investment. Because I want to have, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4. So this is a very basic, even brutal question. But if we work on those figures, I think it can be very interesting, once again, to elaborate the answer that can be simplistic, but can be, the trigger through which to explain, to clarify the success or the failure of a certain social investment.
There's one more question about measuring, so maybe we should link it to this one, because it's not about social impact. Yeşim Sünger Yılmaz from Boston asks, could you talk a little bit more about how sustainable dwellings are measured?
Sustainable?
Dwellings.
But in that case, I was very interested about one topic, because some political parties, some political personnel said, okay, we do not care about the transition. the green transition just something we do not care about. And actually, the market seemed to be very, very differently oriented. So I said, if there is a market with a basic information concerning the quality in terms of sustainability, because we need that basic information. Perhaps that information is structuring the market. In the case of the rings, is there an information, a synthetic information that is capable to differentiate the dwellings between more sustainable and less sustainable? Yes, there is one, because the European Union classified all the dwellings according to the EPC protocol. And in Italy, it's called APE, but in every country has its own name. And so there is a class A, the good one, and the F, E, F, G are the bad ones. So it was interesting to evaluate if the market, not some environmental association, no, the market is capable to differentiate the different opportunities. And with great surprise, I sincerely admit that all the econometric models turn out to be extremely clear. And the first time I showed the results of this research, in which is clear, families just buy a class with a price premium that is clearly identified from a statistical point of view. It's an hedonic price, technically speaking, really clear, statistically well-funded. Well, and on Twitter, I think a colleague of mine put out this information, and I got, all these messages full of hate. I was just amazed. I was, no, that's just, something unacceptable. You're just undermining the property rights and etc. And all of a sudden, some months ago, Bank of Italy published a paper that was part of the annual relation that the president of Bank of Italy presents to the stakeholders. It's a very important presentation. And in that case, it was just clear, on average, 25%. This is the difference between a Class A dwelling with in confrontation with a G dwelling. So actually, there is actually a difference. It's clear the market has decided that, okay, sustainability represents an opportunity. It's a value. And so all of a sudden, all these signals are there to testify that sustainability is not just, the nightmare of someone, but is something already in our life, in our choices, in our economic choices. But I'm happy to present all the researches with the different models, with the people that are interested on this topic.
Ezio, there are a couple of questions about policies. One comes from Nikhil Stapper, who is just sitting right here. In order to attract new investments and population, do you think that shrinking cities should invest in childcare, healthcare, and cultural activities? What might be counterintuitive policy for cities with limited budget?
I had once a conversation with the mayor of a city that is a shrinking city. And he started saying, okay, I would like to promote the wine, the food. And I said, no, this is not my idea. But if you ask me about my idea, there's just one simple rule. If you want to attract people, it's a difficult situation, but if you want to be attractive, okay, on the one hand, just put all your money on something that is capable of growth, capable of economic attraction. And we thought about an economic sector that was a powerful potential drive for growth. And I said, okay, second, you go, and I said, you go to Amsterdam and you copy. You do not, no invention, nothing elaborated. Just you copy the welfare for the families that you have there. So perhaps you have school for children, school for very young children, food for babies, for the newborn, everything, and you copy that kind of supply. Don't tell me you do not have the money, because we were in a region with a specific level of autonomy. So they had the money in order to finance even, rich and complex project in welfare state. I am sure that if you say that, okay, do not go in Amsterdam, in Copenhagen, in Hamburg. No, because you will find the very same welfare state in this city, plus all the advantages of staying in Italy. And let's see what is the final result. Because actually, in Italy, a lot of young people are just moving out of the country. We count in thousands and thousands every year. First reason is, well, I do not have anything to do here because the economic opportunities are low. As I said before, wages remain actually very low with respect of the average that you can find throughout Europe. And the second is that the welfare state is at a level that is so often miserable that normally, for instance, for a woman, it's impossible to have decent development of his personal career. It's very difficult to have a family. And all these features are profoundly affecting the development of the cities. So why not just declaring, with the money I have left in my pocket, I'm going to copy the welfare state that you can find in Copenhagen or in Amsterdam or in Hamburg. And I really do believe that could be a strategic choice. No invention, just copy. Obviously, if you have nothing to do and you have just a good welfare state, you're going to attract just a fraction of the population, the elderly. But if you want to attract the young part of the population, you need to combine economic opportunities and strong, interesting welfare states.
Great. Great. Thank you. There was actually one more question connected to it from Jochen van der Vries. And he just left, but he was asking, what do we do with cities in decline? Hubs and parks will not do it. So your answer to that question is, well, welfare state?
Now, there is one, it's hard to admit that a process, well, I tried to organize a discussion in which a pathologic concentration in one city or in just 3 areas of the country is going to turn out to be a nightmare for the country, in which social economic divisions are going to be the source of polarization, differentiation that is, I think, is going to be a serious problem for our democratic life, for our social life. Nevertheless, process of concentration will impose, I think, in certain cases, that we abandon something and we just, strongly decide, okay, we keep the city because some of the surrounding territories could turn out to be, a huge expense, a huge voice of expenses, and not actually a credible opportunity. So I think we have to be mature enough to say, okay, we have to decide in some areas what we are going to keep and what we are going to abandon. And I think that is also an opportunity. Let me go back, because there is a part of our planning activity that we did not mention, because we are still very city-centric in this discussion. But I think, why not thinking that some parts of our country, some parts of our continent, because I could speak of some areas of Germany, some areas of Spain, some areas of central France. I have a list of potentially abandoned area. Why not thinking that these areas could be a site, of, a list of sites of experimentation in which we work with the not human, and we decide that other living species could have their opportunity. Why we have always this idea, there is no human being, then is a sad and abandoned land. I think in this process of concentration, always, we have this idea of despair, of, okay, that's the death of our presence, and then we have this shock. But I think, okay, why not, establishing a different connection with nature, with living species? If we do not live anymore in certain areas of our countries, that's not, something we have really to consider a dramatic failure. I mean, we have to concentrate our efforts and perhaps thinking about the potential futures of these areas in terms of a living pact with nature and its potential different dimensions. This is not something to escape from discussion, but in some cases, I think that could be a turnaround that could give us an interesting perspective for areas that actually in which nobody wants to live anymore. And that, okay, we just take that into account and we think about a potential future for those areas, imagining a different future, radically different future for those areas.
Thank you, Ezio. We are over time, but and there are still more questions, but we decided that those who are here can continue afterwards. But there's one last question from Ebru Kurt Özman. She's in Istanbul. So she says, thank you very much for your presentation. Perhaps, again, a big question, but how are you interpreting observed authoritarian/populist shift in urban governance, not only in expected context, but also in Western context, in relation to Italy's current regeneration and infrastructure investments? To what extent does this shift shape the strategies, decision-making processes, and outcomes of urban redevelopment projects in this case?
Well, that could be the subject of a new seminar once again. But I would like to go back to the first point that is very, very interesting. And I really thank you for this question. Why do we have what we call a populistic agenda? I think that for a large part of our country, the transition is just to be doomed, to be abandoned, to be out of the agenda, to be the last ones. I think when I have these confrontations with in particular with the mayors, deputy mayors of the small cities, then they still have in the memory the years of the growth, the years in which it was enough to wait, and the booming market would provide us, speculators, investors. So actually, that was the frame, and people think, okay, there is going to be a new occasion, a new opportunity. Since the opportunity does not show up, frustration is the new friend at the table. And from frustration to rage, oh, the step is very, very close. But since we are not capable, and I'm talking about us, people that work in the academia, in the scientific field, in the cultural field, to explain, okay, we have to imagine a radically different future, and we have to elaborate that. If we are not capable of doing so, actually, this sequence, I wait, I get frustrated, I get enraged, is going to be a mechanical sequence we are going to see in our cities, in our region, and is going to be the new dimension of the political life of so many territories. I know that because I come from a small area in the northeast of Italy, and in that case, if you are not able to create a new, interesting perspective, even in a perspective of demographic decline, I mean, you fail because you repeat, okay, let's be attractive. Okay, let's be attractive, but do not think that we are going to be 200,000. We are 100,000. If we remain into that figure, just is already enough. Okay, it's already enough. We have to increase the quality of our life. We have to become a part of a new world. We have to create conditions for a new experience of the urban life. That's the way that we recreate the city as an opportunity. Because if we remain in the old scheme, okay, let's have a speculator, we are going to get rich because of the traditional mechanics of the urban rent. No, that won't happen again. And if we do not change completely the perspective for the future, I think the sequence that I try to design. I wait, I get frustrated, and rage is going to be, my companion for life. I think that is going to open the door for a populist movement, a mass populist movement. Let's take into account, because I just checked these figures. If you consider the success of let's say, the Democratic Party is the left party, in the very center of Milan, the richest area as far as the market values in the whole country. And in that very narrow area, the left party is strong, very strong. In all the other areas surrounding, no. It's the opposite. Because all these people abandoned without a future, without a vision to share, to discuss, to elaborate together, well, they make the steps I described before. So I think it's our duty to create a conversation in which we design a future in which we do not say just, okay, let's live the degrowth and decline experience as a wonderful one. No, that's not the case. I mean, it's not my case. Okay, let's reinterpret the opportunities of a different phase. Let's live together in a space that is abundant of empty spaces in which we can, trigger new experiences using semi-abandoned or abandoned real estate assets. We are ready for that. We know how to use that, how to create new wealth thanks to a new use of public space. Well, why not imagine a city that is capable of create utility, wealth for everyone, thanks to a new project of transformation? So this is not, accepting the decline. It's to reinventing the wealth of a city. For a population, it is now going to grow. That's not an issue. It's in the figures that I presented before. But the idea is, A, why don't we create new wealth from the boundaries we are in, from the real estate assets we are already owner of? Why not? Why don't we are so capable of a new challenge? And that is the creative dimension of urban planning, perhaps even Tuna talks about in his paper. I do not know if she share this idea, but being creative is to imagine a new world starting from what is existing in this very moment. Not imagine, a city that multiplies by 7 or by 10. No. Using what is in front of you right now. And that's to create a new vision starting from the existing assets, from the existing constraints, I think is a great exercise for planners.
Ezio, thank you so much. This was fantastic. I'm afraid we have to stop the recording, but we will definitely continue afterwards. I would like to thank everyone who came today for this wonderful presentation. And also, I would like to thank two Center of Urban Studies for supporting this event with seed grant. And we'll see you next time in the next YouGovern event. Bye-bye.
Let me say thanks once again.
Bye.